Good evening and welcome. My name is Lisa Connery. I'm the Director of Guidance. Thank you for joining us. About 15 minutes ago, Owen and I were kind of sweating it, like, is anybody going to show up? So we're glad you were able to join us tonight. We have an outstanding presenter from Massachusetts Education Finance Authority, Kevin Fudge. I think last year he did a fabulous job explaining the process while also entertaining us, right? He made light of what can be a stressful process. So with all the changes that are occurring and everything that Kevin has to share with you, I'm just going to hand it off to him and just remind you that local scholarship information will come out starting in like January for students, and we'll be communicating that with students and parents through emails through Naviance, okay? So I'm going to hand it off to Kevin.
Thank you very much. How many people came here last year? Okay, wow, 1, 2, 3. So you know the rules, right? The rules, what are the rules?
Well, you said they were going to change last year.
Yes, but I was saying the rules for the presentation.
Oh yeah, you said you can get up anytime you want.
Yes. Also, I like to make this a conversation, not just me talking at you the whole time, which means I take questions as you go. All I ask is that you raise your hand high, state your name. At the end, I will go through and remember everybody's names. Kind of a cool party trick that I do. Tell me your name, ask your question, and I'll answer it. I'll repeat it for everybody else that may not be able to hear it. There's no such thing as a dumb question. If nobody asks questions, I'll call on you. And if you really want me to call on you, you'll sit way in the back in an orange shirt, or you will be on your phones playing like Candy Crush or Clash Royale or whatever people play on their phones nowadays, okay? I respect that some people do not like to speak in public. So if I call on you and you don't want to say anything, just say pass and I'll move along to the next person. Don't do what the guy did last night when I called on him and he's like, can you just not ask people questions and ask them their names? I find that really distracting. I just came here to learn about financial aid. Thanks. I was like, whoa, okay. That's not quite the same thing as pass, but I'll honor your request to move on. So anyway, all right, so those are the ground rules. And also, I'd like to just say I live in Arlington, Mass. I have a junior and a freshman. Don't let my boyish looks fool you. I will be 50 years old next year. I shaved off all my gray and I don't have my readers on, which is my giveaway for how old I am. I do have arthritis, so if you see me walk with a little limp, I mean, that's my dead giveaway. But I am right there with you, okay? Like, I'm right there with you, and I have 2 boys. I was kind of hoping we'd have girls so they'd be responsible and, you know, daddy's a little girl. I had the wedding songs all picked out. I was all about it, right? You know, let's slay the dragon. I'll be the damsel in distress and you can save me, girl power. I was all about it. But I have 2 boys who, let's just say, aren't terribly organized and aren't thinking about their futures. So if that's you, I feel your pain. But hopefully after tonight, you will feel equipped on learning and understanding the language of financial aid, because this whole process, it can be kind of overwhelming, but if you kind of understand it on a kind of like a granular level, understanding the language of financial aid, what the terms mean, you'll be having conversations with the financial aid offices and you'll feel more confident because you'll have that baseline understanding and can speak that language, okay? All right, let's see if my clicker works. Excellent. So for those of you that don't know MIFA, MIFA is the Massachusetts Education Financing Authority. It was created in 1982 by the state legislature. The main takeaway from this is that when you get information about this process, the financial aid process, paying for college, make sure you're getting it from a neutral third party. Don't just go to Google and type in scholarships and click on the first link that you see. Okay? Either get the information directly from the school's financial aid website or from a trusted not-for-profit entity that is providing you with free information about this. There are many, this being a capitalist society, there are many outfits out there that are trying to separate you from your money and will say, oh, hey, you want the tips on how to fill your financial aid application and get the most money? Pay me and I'll show you how to do it. No, okay? There are plenty of free resources out there, and you shouldn't have to pay anybody to help you, especially for a scholarship search. You should never pay anybody to help you win free money, okay? So MIFA is one of those trusted entities, and you can go to mifa.org to sign up for webinars, events, and things of that nature. So tonight we're going to talk about types and sources of aid, like what is financial aid. We're going to talk about the application process. There's two main applications for financial aid, the CSS profile for certain private schools and the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. We're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about how financial decisions are made. So once colleges have the information that was in those financial aid applications, how do they then make the decision on how to put your financial aid package together? Okay? We'll talk about paying for college, so paying the bill after you get your financial aid award. And then we're going to talk about free resources, emphasis on the word free. Now, again, I don't want to offend anybody who is hanging out a shingle and is a paid college counselor because they can perform great service. But in general, you shouldn't have to pay for anything related to this process. Okay, there are plenty of free resources out there to help you navigate. Okay, so when I say what are the types of financial aid, if financial aid is the, actually I will get up and walk around. If financial aid is the cake, what are the ingredients? So what are the types of aid? Who wants to jump in and tell me? Yes, what's your name, sir? Jay, the person who runs 5 miles a day when he runs. Excellent, Jay. Give me a type of financial aid.
Work study.
Work study, excellent. What is another type of financial aid? My friend in the pink shirt and the jean jacket, what is your name? Judy. Judy, what's up? We have Jay and Judy. Did not plan that, but nice coincidence. Scholarships, excellent. I already mentioned scholarships. So far we have federal work study and we have scholarships. What is another type of financial aid? Sir, right there in the black vest. What's your name? Bob, what's up? Close, but no cigar. That's not what I'm looking for. Bob said academic merit. I'm looking for another type of free money. Yes, what's your name, sir? Sean, what's up? S-E-A-N or S-H-A-W-N? Right the first time. Excellent, like Sean Penn. What's a type of financial aid that we haven't talked about yet? Federal loans, excellent. So far we have scholarships, we have loans, we have work study. What is the last type of financial aid I'm looking for? My friend right here, what's your name? It's okay. Bill and Bev. Bill, you can go. You shouted it out. What is it? Okay. All right, Bill. Bev, what is it? It's a type of free money. It is a gentleman's name. Grants. Excellent. We have grants. We have scholarships. We have loans. We have work study. What is the best type of financial aid? Grants and scholarships. Why? Because it's free money you do not have to pay back. That is the best type of financial aid. That's the type of aid we all want, free money, right? Again, don't pay anybody to conduct a scholarship search. You shouldn't have to pay anybody to earn free money, okay? Loans by themselves are not bad. A lot of times people, and I think kind of it's a misnomer that loans counts as aid because you're like, wait a minute, I'm borrowing money and I'm going to pay it back and that's aid. Yes, for technical purposes, it is considered financial aid. Loans by themselves aren't bad. What is bad is borrowing without regard to how much you're borrowing and not understanding the cumulative impact of what you're borrowing. Because when you take out a student loan, I call it kind of the iTunes effect of borrowing. Because when you, like let's say you have an iPhone or iTunes, or I guess nobody has iTunes anymore. I'm dating myself, right? It's like I had a Sony Walkman. They're like, what's that? But when you download an app and you say, here, agree to these terms and conditions, you don't scroll through the whole terms and conditions. You just check it off, and then you go do whatever it is your app does, right? Same thing with student loans. When you get a financial aid award letter and you go to online to then indicate that you want student loans, all you're doing is checking off a box, and that constitutes your electronic signature. You're not actually looking at what this means. Also, people don't review what their repayment options are, and so they end up thinking, okay, well, I'm only going to borrow this for this 1 year. Maybe it takes you 4 or 5 or 6 years to get a bachelor's degree, and those loans can accumulate, right? And you're not necessarily thinking about what the ultimate cost will be. That's where loans can be problematic. But by themselves, loans just aren't bad, right? And then work study is the last type of financial aid. And that is something that's given to you directly through the college when you get a job that's through the college and they sort of reimburse you for money you've already spent. So in other words, you put the money out. So if you have work study of $2,000, you still pay that as part of your bill, but the student will earn that back through an on-campus job. And why work study is better than like a job you might have at the mall is because that job is going to be on campus. And they understand that you are a student first. So the job can accommodate the student's academic schedule. Whereas if you have a job at the mall and you tell your supervisor, hey, I'm not gonna be able to come in, I have an exam, or that doesn't fit with my schedule, they're like, well, that doesn't work for me, right? So work study can be advantageous to you in that regard. Question, yes? What's your name, sir?
My name is Bashu.
Bashu, what's going on?
So, the work study, from what I understand, that the pay that the student gets does not go to debt, it goes directly to the student.
Correct. Bashu's question is, the pay that the student earns from a work-study job goes directly to the student. Exactly, because think of it as sort of reimbursement, a credit for you that you already paid, but the student gets to, it goes to the student, but it's defraying the cost that the family already paid. Yes, what's your name?
Tim.
Tim, what's up?
Is that taxable?
Is the
Federal works with the money that goes to the student, is it taxable income?
it's treated like any sort of other job.
Okay.
Correct, yes, Tim. Quick name check, Bashu, Tim, Jay, Judy, Bev, Bill, Bob, what's up? And I think that's it so far, right? Okay, excellent. What's your name, ma'am?
Lori?
Lori, pleasure. How are you tonight? Excellent?
I'm great. So
Good.
my understanding is one big difference with federal work study is that the earnings that you earn from federal work study do not count as income in the future year. Is that still the case?
Correct. For the student, you're not going to fill out like a 1099 form and say like this is income, or like for tax purposes, like if they fill out the 1040 EZ form. Like it's not considered the same as like having a job at the Gap at the mall. So the important thing to remember too, Lori, also is that the work study jobs are first come, first serve. So even though it may be on your financial aid award letter, the student actually has to go get it from the school. So the student has to go to the financial aid office and say, I have work study on here, I want a work study job. So if your student belongs to the Kevin Fudge Society of Procrastination, make sure that they like get with like the program and are first in line. Because if it's towards the end of the semester and then they're like, hey, can I have a work study job? And the school's like, sorry, then that's money that you could have earned that you no longer have access to. Okay? Thank you for your questions. So the student loans, the emphasis is on the word student. The first question I always get about these are who is ultimately responsible for repaying this and whose name is it in? And these are federal Stafford student loans. So these are all in the student's name. And for student loans, there is a limit as to how much they can borrow each year. So if you're a first-year student, the max you can borrow is $5,500. If you're a second-year student, the max you can borrow is $6,500. And if you're a third and fourth year student, the max you can borrow is $7,500. The key takeaways from this are federal student loans have fixed interest rates. Those interest rates are fixed every July 1st for the upcoming academic year. So for the current academic year, 2023 to 2024, the interest rate is fixed at 5.49%. The only way that interest rate will change is if after the student separates from school, they have multiple loans and consolidate those loans, the new interest rate will be an average of all the loans that were put together. That's the only way the interest rate changes. So if you take out a student loan, the interest rate will be that way for the life of the loan outside of consolidation. So the advantage that you have with federal student loans is that there's no payments that are due while the student is enrolled at least half time. There are deferment and forbearance options, loan forgiveness options. You may have heard now that student loan repayment is set to resume in October. There's conversations about how much people will have their loans discharged. If you're on an income-driven plan, how many people will now be paying zero as their monthly payment. And if you pay zero, there's no interest that's being charged on those zero monthly payments. The other key takeaway I want people to have is if you borrow the max, you could have $27,000 plus interest. It's important to think about like what that repayment will look like on a standard plan and to give your student some perspective and say, look, if you go to this school where you're going to have to borrow student loans, your repayment is going to be X each month when you graduate. So now, if you want to live with us and like save money and crush your student loan debt, that's a possibility. I don't know about you, but my kids, when they're 18, it's like, see ya, But of course, boys and mothers and sons, my son the other day was like, Mom, what if I wanted to live here until I was like 35? And she's like, of course, honey. I'm like, no. No, I woke up in cold sweats that night. See, here I'm thinking of like, we're taking a Viking River cruise. You can tell I'm old, right? Because when I watch Jeopardy and I see the Viking River cruise, I'm like, sweetheart, we got to sign up for that. I'm already planning. I got the rooms measured for the hot tub. Like, I'll miss them when they're gone, but like, I'm ready for that next stage of life. Question in the back? Yes? Behind Lori, what's your name?
My name's Carolyn.
Carolyn, pleasure.
It seems like it's very low, the amounts that you can borrow,
Yes. Yes, Carolyn makes a very salient point. The amount that the student can borrow is low relative to what costs are. And we will talk about that later on, but you bring up a good point because the sticker price for the schools can be upwards, particularly private schools, can be upwards of $80,000, right? And you look at that, you're like, how does $5,000 take a chunk out of 80? So I will explain how that works later on, but I think the key thing to keep in mind is that there are many different avenues towards acquiring a bachelor's degree, and if you look at how some people do it outside of New England, where there is such a high concentration of private liberal arts colleges, 70% of the country, people go to public schools, 70%. And many states have robust pathways where students start in a 2-year school, transfer to a 4-year school, and then graduate with like a quarter of it, like maybe that much debt, maybe $5,000 worth of debt, because they got through school and they're not overwhelmed with how much it costs. So that's why I'm trying to help you be a savvy consumer of higher ed, because if you're about to make this investment, I want you to do it clear-eyed and understand kind of what the return, hopefully, on that investment is, and then how to make college payments in a responsible way, because you can't borrow for your retirement, right? And I really encourage folks not to kind of leverage themselves, particularly, one, if you have multiple students coming behind the one that's going to school, and two, if your earnings window is going to be closing soon. So that's why, again, the information I'm going to provide will hopefully set you on that path. Question, yes. What's your name?
I'm Adi.
Adit. Pleasure.
So when does the interest start getting calculated? As soon as you take the loan or when you start making the payment?
Excellent question. So when does the interest start to accrue on the loan? And this is when I'll make one last comment on this slide and move on, because I want to be sensitive of time. That's the difference between a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. On a subsidized loan, the government is responsible for the interest, and while interest is accruing, the government will pay that interest. And so when the student leaves school, they will assume responsibility for the interest. On an unsubsidized loan, the interest accrues and the student is responsible for the interest as soon as the loan is dispersed, okay? And you don't apply for a subsidized or unsubsidized loan. You have to be income eligible for it based on the information that you put in the financial aid application, okay? Excellent questions. Loving this audience. Lori, another question. You're approaching your question quota. Just kidding. You can ask as many as you want. Go ahead.
What's the maximum subsidized you can qualify? Are you going to go over the breakdown, or is the maximum subsidized you can qualify for in your freshman year 55, or is a portion of that sub and a portion of that unsub?
Correct. So the maximum sub you can get is $3,500, and then you would get a $2,000 unsubsidized loan. That's the max you could get. So we talked about the types of aid. We talked about grants and scholarships, loans, work study, right? Now, these are the sources of aid. So where does the financial aid actually come from? So the primary source is the federal government. So we talk about federal Pell Grants, Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grants, or SEOG, okay? And you can also get federal student loans and federal work study. That is all in the federal bucket, okay? In the state bucket, you can get a Mass grant, you can get a Massachusetts no-interest loan, you can get the John and Abigail Adams tuition, MCAS proficiency, tuition waiver. There's a tuition waiver for children who have been in the Department of Children and Families and Social Services. And so those are all state programs. And those programs that are available to you by virtue of applying for the FAFSA. When you apply for the free application for federal student aid, you are applying for the federal pot and the state pot, depending on whatever state you're in. We are in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so we are eligible for Massachusetts. We're not going to get, if you go to college in Virginia, you are not going to then be eligible for Virginia resident in-state tuition as well as whatever you get from the federal government. In the institutional bucket, colleges and universities have their own financial aid that they give out. So for private colleges, what they like to say is, yes, our college may cost $90,000, but we give significant discounts, and so your net price might be closer to $45 or $50. And the reason why they say their net price is that is because they have institutional aid that they provide to students and families. Now, the way you access college and university institutional aid is through a separate financial aid application called the CSS profile. Also, the FAFSA, when you do the FAFSA for public schools, they may be able to give you institutional resources as well, but the ones that are significant in size are going to be with the private colleges and universities. Okay? And then the last bucket would be other types of agencies that you might be able to get private scholarships from. So like the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, the Rotary Club, things like that. Also, I would check with your employers because sometimes your employers can have scholarship programs for employees' kids. In years past, I've helped families who worked at Verizon. They had a scholarship program for employees. I think Delta Airlines had a scholarship program. I don't know if it still exists. And then I also helped a young woman whose mother worked at the MBTA. They had a scholarship program for MBTA employees. So double check with your employers to see what kind of scholarship opportunities are available to employees' children. Again, do not go into Google and type in scholarship. If you want to do an online scholarship search, go through MIFA, it's mifapathway.org, or go to fastweb.com. And these slides should be available, they were available on the outside, and then the school counselor can actually email you, so don't worry about taking pictures. Question, yes? Nancy, all right, you knew the rules. I didn't even have to ask. What was your question?
So you mentioned that private schools have financial aid and fill out the CSS.
Correct.
Are the requirements the same? Are they need-based, or do they take into account academics and how much the school might?
Sure. So Nancy's question is, when you fill out the, and that provides an excellent segue to my comment about merit-based aid, which somebody else mentioned, I think it was Bob. Nancy's question was about the CSS profile when you're applying to financial aid from private schools. What are the factors that they take into consideration? Is it the same methodology used for the federal application? And then how do they distribute their resources, basically, right? Like what are they looking for? So for private schools, many can offer what we call merit-based aid. Okay, so this is how you can demonstrate merit academically. You have a really good GPA, or you take honors classes, AP classes, international baccalaureate if it's offered, and you demonstrate academic prowess. You can receive merit-based aid from a private college based on those criteria. You can also demonstrate merit by athletics. Maybe you're a star tennis player, maybe you're awesome at water polo, lacrosse. You can also have merit artistically. You are an awesome singer. Okay, anybody ever see the movie Pitch Perfect? College a cappella? Okay, not to brag or anything, but if you read the book, you will see Kevin Fudge. I'm not going to tell you what page. Because the movie Pitch Perfect was based off the book that was written off of 3 college a cappella groups, the Yale Whiff and Poofs, the Tufts Beelzebubbs, and my alma mater, the University of Virginia Hullabahoos. So that's my nice little party trick. I'm not going to sing. Just kidding. Maybe later. No. You're like, is he going to sing? Is he going to show us? No. But if you watch the movie, you see at the end, the Bard and Bellows were on stage at Carnegie Hall. There was a group singing the final countdown in the wings with their little funky bathrobes. That was my group, the University of Virginia Hullabahoos. Great song by Europe, by the way. It went to number 8 back in 1997 for those of you that used to listen to Casey Kasem's American Top 40, like I do. But the thing you want to make sure about merit aid is sometimes there is a separate application, Nancy, that's required to apply for institutional aid. Double check with the individual school's website to see if they have a separate financial aid application in addition to the FAFSA and the profile. I don't know that many schools do. I know for graduate school, I remember them saying, filled out this checklist to see, and you can be eligible for certain merit-based awards. But for undergraduate, I don't know. But just double check, because the deadlines to receive some of these considerations for merit-based aid could be as early before Thanksgiving. Okay? Question, yes? Carrie. Like Cary Grant?
Yes.
Okay, sweet.
That is not my name.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Merit-based aid, at the very beginning of this slide, did you say that it was private schools?
It's not private schools only. Carrie's question was, is merit-based aid only for private schools? Typically, yes, but not entirely. Usually, schools that have considerably larger financial aid budgets can designate that a certain portion of merit-based aid. But usually for state universities, they're not dealing with the same sort of resources, so not as much. And the thing to remember too about this is that it may not be renewable. So it may be like a one-time award to entice you to matriculate, but the problem would be is if the student returns for the second year, that same $10,000, $20,000 might not be available. So you want to make sure that it's renewable. Most aid is going to be need-based aid. And let me just save you some frustration, because your definition of need is very different from the federal government and college and university's definition of your need, okay? So just recognize that it's the same across the board. It's a formula that they use, but the way that they calculate your need is from the formula after you fill out all of your financial aid applications, and then they come back to you and they say, okay, if this is your need, they take what the cost of the school is, all in, they subtract your what they think you can pay, and then the remainder that's left over is what constitutes your need. And I'm going to tell you right now what like my kids, so like I said, I have a junior and a freshman. Like if a college asks me, what's your need? The college costs $50,000. I'm going to be like, my need is $50,000. Thank you. Please. Yes, please and thank you. Like that's my need. But clearly they're not going to be like, yeah, well, we're going to give you 50 large. Most aid is need-based. So just so you know, I mean, if you do get some merit aid, great, but the majority of aid, how it's distributed, is going to be need-based. So I mentioned the financial aid applications. The takeaway from this slide right here, financial aid is incredibly time-sensitive. Okay, remember I mentioned the Kevin Fudge Procrastination Society? Please do not sleep on deadlines. When you are looking and applying to the colleges and you're going through the actual application process, make sure you're checking with financial aid office to find out when those deadlines are. I'm a big believer in paper. Like I am not a digital native. I'm Gen X. I'm not millennial or Gen Z. I like manila envelopes. I like paper. I like documentation. I like to write out my spreadsheets or print them out. So there will be, you have 10 colleges, you may have 10 different financial aid deadlines or 5 different financial aid deadlines. Make sure you are on top of that. Tim, question.
My understanding is the FAFSA doesn't come out till December.
Excellent point, Tim. Yes.
People that are applying early are applying early, so obviously they don't.
Correct.
Talk about that process.
Absolutely. Yeah, Tim, thanks for your question. So typically the FAFSA is available every October 1st. Okay? This year, because of the changes, which I'll talk about shortly, the FAFSA is anticipated to be available December 1st. Okay? So if you're applying early, so we're getting into murky waters, Tim, and you nod and you're like, yes, I can't wait to get into murky waters. Whereas me, and this is being recorded, I have to be very careful about what I say. So there's a difference between early decision and early action. Early decision is binding, meaning that if you apply early decision and you are accepted, you will withdraw your applications from other schools and you basically promise to matriculate at that college or university regardless of whatever they give you in financial aid because you're agreeing to come. Which, as you can imagine, can be slightly problematic if your financial aid award is not quite what you were, or your discount isn't quite what you were hoping for. So without going too far into the weeds on that, my advice is to look at early action, because early action gives you the benefits of early decision, meaning that you can know if you're not accepted or not and know where you can matriculate as early as December. But because it's early action, it's not binding. It doesn't require you to sign a contract and say, I will come. You have the opportunity to evaluate other financial aid awards that can come in prior to your May 1st kind of deposit deadline, where you're going to deposit and say, yes, I'm going to matriculate here. I think as kind of a consumer advocate or as general person who walks the face of the earth, I think that's a better idea, because now you're able to compare, and actually you can play schools off each other and say, hey, look, College A, you gave me $20,000, but College B gave me $30,000. Help me understand how you arrived at that number, because this college gave me more, and I really want to go to your college, but if you give me $10,000 less, that doesn't really give me much incentive to come here, right? So that would be my advice. Yes, Nancy.
When you get your acceptance from a college, do they immediately give you, do they let you know what kind of merit or award you got?
Yes, thanks for your question. So Nancy's question is, when you get an acceptance letter from a college, do they immediately follow up with a financial aid letter? Or do they tell you in the award letter if you've won any sort of merit-based aid? So yes and yes. In your acceptance letter, they can say, congratulations, Jane Doe, on your admittance to John Smith University. We are excited to award you with a $20,000 presidential scholarship. And that can be in the admissions letter itself, and then it can be followed up with the actual financial aid award letter that will show you that award in addition to anything else you may have received. The key thing I want you to remember about that, though, Nancy and everybody else, is that in that statement that you won a merit-based award, that $20,000 could either be $5,000 or it could be $80,000. Why? Because if it's a one-time $20,000 award, you have to split that up over 4 years and say it's $5,000 for a year, and that 5,000 times 4 equals 20. It could be 80 if that $20,000 is renewable each 4 years you're in college, right? So now 20 times 4 is 80. The key thing is, if it is renewable, it is going to be based on maintaining a certain GPA. And logic would determine that the higher the award that you got, the higher the GPA requirement is going to be. So if you get a $50,000 merit-based award, you're probably going to need to maintain like a 3.5, maybe even a 3.6, right? If the award is like $5,000, maybe they'll say, oh, okay, well, just as long as you stay enrolled and have a 2.0, you can get it the next year. In the book that I'm going to be writing, the chapters on uncomfortable conversations with parents and kids will be about anecdotes and lessons that I had from the field about kids who lost their scholarship because they didn't maintain their GPA. Eek. That's kind of an awkward conversation. So you can lose a scholarship by not maintaining your GPA. Yes, next to my friend in the orange who's all set for Halloween. I like that orange and black combination. What's your name, sir? Kevin? As am I. Excellent. Nice to meet you. Yes, so Kevin's question is, do you fill the CSS profile out every year? And yes, you do. Thank you, Kevin, for the nice segue into talking about both the CSS and the FAFSA. Okay? So before we get to the CSS, we're going to talk about the FAFSA, which you apply all financial aid applications every year. Financial aid is a year-to-year proposition. Even if you don't think, a lot of times people are like, well, I'm not going to get anything. Even if you don't think you'll qualify, if you won Powerball, if you're Tom Brady's long-lost child and you have $50 million in the bank, everybody in this room, everybody on the planet should apply for financial aid. Full stop. You should apply for financial aid. Okay? Everybody should apply for financial aid because it unlocks the door to merit-based aid. And should your financial circumstances change during the academic year, it provides a seamless opportunity for the college to help you out and give you aid because you already have an application on file. Kevin, yes? So that's a good question, Kevin. Kevin's question is, do the college revisit merit-based aid on a year-to-year basis after the student has been enrolled? So again, I'm being recorded, so I want to make sure I choose my words carefully. Higher education is a business. Okay, I'd like to, as much as I'd want this to be like an altruistic venture that helps society become more educated and learned and, engage citizens that like want to uplift their communities, at the bottom line, it's a business. So in many cases, merit-based aid has been used as a tool for recruitment, and schools in the past have said, all right, you know what, we're going to give you that $20,000 this first year, but now that you're coming and you've found your community, we're not going to give you that money anymore. So it's hard to say because there's so many schools and then schools have different policies. I would say in general, the amount that you get, it's whatever you get initially, it's how that's structured. So again, it could be a one-time award and they will state it specifically in the acceptance letter, and then it's not something that you would get the following year, although you could be eligible for a scholarship as a student at that university. So, for example, if the student decided to major in engineering or physics or something else, depending on how well they did, they could then apply for scholarships internally, but they're not necessarily going to get anything directly from the financial aid office as an award for their merit like an incoming student would. So it's just important to pay attention on how the letter is constructed, the language that's in it. And also you can have a conversation with the school even beforehand to learn about their policies and their approach to merit aid. Okay, I saw a hand up over here. Yes, next to Carrie, what's your name? Amy, excellent. How's it going?
Good, thanks. For need-based aid, if your situation is typically going to be the same year after year, do you see those swings in what you're likely to be offered?
No, if your finances remain pretty consistent, then your quote-unquote need is going to remain pretty consistent, then how you are packaged can remain pretty consistent. There's usually, I will say, even though college is a business, one thing trend that I have noticed is sort of a getting away from the bait and switch, where they give you a lot of money in the first year and then like slowly reduce the amount that they give you years going forward. So there is some consistency to that, as well as some schools are saying, we're going to freeze tuition. So once you get in, for you, it's going to be X if you pay. So there have been some improvements on that front. I did want to mention the important point about this. I'll get to your question in 1 second. FSA aid, if you look at that fourth bullet point, FSA, fsa.ed.gov, everybody who fills out the financial aid form needs to have an FSA ID, because that is your digital signature that you'll apply to complete the application. If you are a parent, if you're a two-parent household, only one parent needs to have an FSA ID. Okay, it's like a PIN for an ATM machine. You only need one, okay? And also, as a parent, if you have multiple kids, you only need one FSA ID. Each child in the household needs his or her own FSA ID, okay? That's something that everybody can do right now prior to the FAFSA being available in December. So if you do not already have an FSA ID, strongly recommend you do that right now, get one, and then when it comes time to complete the application, you'll be one step ahead of the game. Yes, what's your name, sir?
Hi, Amit.
Amit, what's going on?
Hi. So this year we are applying for early action in November.
Yes,
And this thing starts in December.
correct.
You fill this first and then apply for CSS for that specific problem?
Yes, so Amit's question is, if you're applying early, how do all these application timelines fit together? And so you want to follow the time, like fill out the applications according to which one comes first. So in other words, it does not have to be like synchronous. So you can apply to the college for admissions and do that in October or November. That's done. Then you can do the CSS profile, fill that out, that's done. When the FAFSA becomes available, then you can fill that out and that's done. It may be a little bit confusing because it's not one-stop shopping, but there's no disadvantage to doing it. I mean, that's the only way you can do it. And you may receive information in a staggered fashion. So you may find out you get accepted, and then the award may not come immediately afterwards because they're still processing. So I would just, again, prepare yourselves this year for some confusion. This is new to all financial professionals because, again, their typical timeline is October. There's new rules and regulations, and then the timeline's changed. Also, add into that, student loan repayment is starting again after 3.5 years of nothing. So the Department of Education, like everything, just like exhale, be patient, kill them with kindness if you're getting on the phone either with HELP, the Federal Student Aid Helpline, or the actual college or university. Because it's going to be a little bit tricky, but just again, be patient. You can work through it, and there's help available. The one last point I wanted to mention about this is that you do not have to complete the FAFSA or the profile in a single setting. You can save it and come back to it later to complete it over a period of multiple days. Okay, it's just. If you do not complete the FAFSA after 45 days, not sure why anybody would do that, but if you start a FAFSA and don't complete it after 45 days, it will be deleted. So you can save it, come back to it, you don't have to finish it all at once. So when we talk about what's on the FAFSA, pretty basic demographic information. The big takeaway here, the big change, is that in years past, in cases of divorce, the parent information that would go on the FAFSA is the parent that made the least amount of money if there was joint custody. If there was sole custody, then the custodial parent would provide the income information. But in most cases, if there was joint custody, you'd go with the parent who'd make the less. The new rule is, according to the letter of the law, in cases of divorce, the parent who provides the most material support is the parent who provides the income information on the FAFSA. So yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that's the rule, and we'll see how that plays out. I would just say though that there's no audit, so if there's joint custody, they're not going to hide in the bushes and be like, you spent one more night at the mom's house versus that. Like, they don't do that. So use your judgment in how you fill it out. If divorced parents still live together for financial reasons, sometimes they do. I was actually in this town one time. This woman was like, why would anybody live together if they're divorced? And I'm like, well, not everybody lives in this town, which is kind of, Desperate Housewives-y, I guess, to put it kindly. So sometimes divorced people have to live together for financial reasons, so that's why. So yeah, she was not my favorite parent, but no names, and I will not name the town, although you can probably take a wild guess. Legal guardians are not parents. So if the child has a legal guardian, that's not a parent. And the great thing about the FAFSA is that the IRS imports the information into the FAFSA directly. Okay, so you no longer have to enter your income information in manually. The last change I wanted to mention is, and this is another source of controversy, is the number of children in college will not be included in the calculation. In years past, the formula basically was like, what is your yearly income, what are the number of people in your household, and then what are the number of people in your household that are in college. But that doesn't, so in other words, when you have multiple kids in college, your need was considered greater, so what they'd expect you to pay would be lower, but that's not the case anymore. There was a lot of like hand wringing and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did this, but some economists and some people who are like super good with numbers, like I'm okay with numbers, but I'm like not like wicked good with numbers. The people who are wicked good with numbers and crunched them, the impact wasn't as dire as it was proclaimed in certain media outlets. So it's almost like a typical family would pay $3,000 more than they would had they got that discount. So it's not. I mean, it is impactful. Not poo-pooing $3,000, but it's not like 30 or 50 or 100,000. It's not like exaggerated. Tim, did you have another question?
If the income is based on your past year's
Tim's question is about income adjustments, like when they measure. That's a great segue to this, Tim. Thank you. He's not a plant, by the way, but that was an awesome segue. The income information for FAFSA purposes is always 2 years prior to the academic year in question. So for those of you who have seniors, they will be, presuming they don't take a year off and go swim with whales off the coast of New Zealand, if they go to college in the fall of 2024, then you're going to use 2022 income information on the FAFSA, okay? If your income has changed considerably since 2022, you still put that calendar year's tax information on the FAFSA. You follow up with the individual colleges and universities to notify them that the information on the FAFSA does not reflect your current situation. And in that case, the college or university can examine your current financial statements and make an evaluation, and they have what's called professional judgment, and they can make adjustments to your aid to reflect your current reality. But it's important to note that you fill out the FAFSA as is, as they require it, and then you make adjustments later on down the road. Don't try to be a hero and be like, well, I'll save you the time, college. Like, I'll rejigger the formula. Like, no, just no, okay? Like, just play it straight and narrow right down the middle, okay? Excellent question, Tim. And the other thing I wanted to mention, if you do have a 529 plan, make sure you list it as a parent asset, not as a student asset. List it as a parent asset, not as a student asset. And then grandparents who may have a 529 plans are not included as assets as they were in past years. So the trick was you used to take the distributions as a third and fourth year so that it wouldn't show up in subsequent years for filling out financial aid, but it's not calculated in the same fashion that it was. Nancy and then Kevin. Yes?
Yeah, so what about money in savings for retirement and like an IRA or?
Yep. So for the FAFSA, the great thing about the FAFSA is that you only include liquid assets. So money in checking and savings. You do not include anything for retirements like 401k, IRA. The only way any sort of retirement would be calculated is if you took a distribution on that and then it's reflected on your adjusted gross income on your tax form, okay? Otherwise, those are protected under the FAFSA. The profile is another story, which I'll get to in a second, okay? Also, let me just say this too. There's a question about what you have in checkings and savings. If, let's say, you have a pretty significant sum, and then let's say, so for example, I always love using this scenario, right? So let's say you have, I don't know, $50,000 in the bank, and you're like, you know what, sweetheart, I want to remodel the kitchen or remodel that bathroom. And you know you're going to have you're going to write a pretty big check. People are like, well, should I wait until after I cash the check to show that I took the $30,000 out, or can I just say that I have $20,000 because in a couple weeks that's what it'll be down to? I think that's a really interesting question, because that question on the FAFSA I find kind of annoying. It's like, on this day, what do you have in your checking? And I'm like, well, that could change like week to week, right? Or, in a month. And so use your judgment on how to like sort of estimate that number and put it as accurate as you deem necessary, given your current circumstance. And again, there's not necessarily an audit that's going to be performed. And for your savings, it's more, for the profile, when they get into questions about assets, then you can be super, super detailed. But if you're just filling out the FAFSA, you can be, judicious with your estimates, if you catch my drift. Yes? Hang on one second. Kristen, you said?
Yes.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Excellent, thanks.
I'm a graduate of Arlington High School.
You're a graduate of Arlington High School? Let's go Spy Ponders. Yes. All right, give me some. Oh, come on. You're not older than me. Come on, Kristen.
So the income's based on 2022.
Correct.
Are the assets and savings and investments based on today or 2022 as well?
Correct. So Kristen's question is, when they're looking at the assets in addition to income, Income is based off of 2022 tax data. Are assets based off of 22 as well, or are they based off today? The question, it asks you, as of today, what is in your checking and savings account? Okay? So you put today for what you have, and then you use your taxes for past information. You, sir, asked a question about verification. What's your name? Right next to Bashu. Dinesh? Pleasure.
They verify what you put down for your savings? I mean, if you're off by a little bit or...
Okay, so Dinesh's question is, do they verify what you put in your savings, or can you be off by a little bit? That, my friend, is an outstanding question. An outstanding question. To which I will say, use your judgment. Does that hopefully answer your question? Use your judgment. Kevin.
I screwed this up last year, so if I'm 29 for the cost as a parent asset is just for that one student, and then the others, if you're 529 for other kids, you don't include that as a parent asset for the cost. Right?
You include only those for the student. You do not include the accounts for all students. So if it says include 529 accounts only for the student, it's only for the student in question. You don't put everything.
Is the CSS different?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe I did it.
I don't think you did it wrong, Kevin. I'm an optimist by nature. Okay, I believe in you. I think you did it correctly.
How about doing right this year?
So you're going to do it right this year? I believe in you, okay? You're going to do it right.
The CSS is different. It wants to know the total for all 529s.
It is. And thank you for that nice segue. You're not a plant just like Timmy. You're not a plant. But like, what's going on, folks? I mean, this is magic that's happening right here. You were here last year? Is that why? Okay, great. All right. So, you know that the CSS profile, Kevin, is the bane of my existence. Okay? I'm really choosing my words carefully again, being recorded. But I just am not, no, does anybody work for the college board here, by the way? Just so I don't offend anybody. I don't want to be offensive. I just find it really frustrating because they ask you all these questions and then they don't give you any money. They're like, see, you have hidden accounts in the Cayman Islands. See, you hid money in your flower jar. See, you're actually related to Genghis Khan on your mother's third cousin side, so you're entitled to, I'm like, really? Really? Come on. But on the profile, they ask you, did you purchase a home? What year did you purchase your home? What was the purchase price of your home? How much is left on your mortgage? What is your monthly mortgage? What's the percentage rate of your monthly mortgage? What is the current home value of your mortgage? And don't use Zillow because Zillow lowballs it. Like, it's insanity. But like I said, you play, it's like in golf. You want to hit it straight down the fairway, you play it down the middle. Okay? You answer the questions as openly, as honestly as you can. Okay? Sometimes you want to make an estimate. You use your judgment on how you want to make an estimate. Okay? I will say, though, that the two questions that I think are important on the profile to get right are, one, they're going to ask you, how much do you think that you can pay for 1 year of college? And when it comes time to answer that question, don't insult the college and be like zero, because I would be like zero. I'm not going to pay anything, okay? You can't say that. Because if you're applying to a private school and you own a home, they're going to think of, okay, well, theoretically, you could use your home as an ATM machine and, refinance and have some resources. So you can come up with a number that in your head is reasonable. I would say come up with a number, maybe take off 10 or 15%, and say, this is what because basically what you're signaling to the private colleges, we recognize that we are primarily responsible for paying for our kids' college, okay? That's your signal that you're speaking their language. You get it, okay? But in the supplemental questions section, think of that as your like creative writing, like free space to say, tell them what you really think. And in that case, you can make the argument and say, look, you know what? On paper, it appears that we have this and we have that and we could do this. But here's our reality. And you can use that optional space to kind of articulate, like, yes, this is one of our top choices. Yes, we'd really like our son or daughter to go here. But we're hoping that the finances work out, and here's how our resources are allocated. I did help a gentleman write an appeal because the kid got into Yale. He had older parents, so his parents were in their late 60s, and one of the parents needed long-term health care that was not going to be covered by insurance or through other things like Medicare. And so they had, I think it was over $340,000 in the bank. And so the school, it was Yale, gave him a very paltry financial aid award. And the kid, to his credit, was like, you know what, I'm not going to go there because it's going to cost too much strain, and I don't want my parents to draw from that fund that's going to help the one who needs medical assistance. So I helped them write an appeal to the school, and I was like, look, this money that you see here is for this explicit purpose. It is not for, going to Macau or Vegas and, putting it all on black. Like, we have specific concerns for this, and, could you reevaluate the criteria by which you gave us only, $6,000 or $7,000. And the school came back and they upped his financial aid by $50,000, right? So it's not, it's kind of like it's like a double-edged sword. Schools that have tremendous resources can be, shall we say, a little like Uncle Scrooge with those resources, or they can then have the flexibility to be generous if the situation requires it. So I guess my point for all this is, if I'm applying to colleges, I'm not going to apply to all private schools that cost $80,000, hoping I'm going to get a significant discount. In general, my rule is, if you get a significant discount that makes the cost of a private college or university equivalent to what it costs to go to our flagship university all in, then I would make that evaluation, right? So if you're applying for a school that costs $85,000 and they give you a $50,000 discount, your net cost out of pocket will be $35,000, which is roughly what it costs to go to UMass Amherst all in. Okay, that's a reasonable, fair comparison. I would go forth with that. But what I wouldn't do is stretch, because it's a bachelor's degree that, in the end, there is a line at which the investment sort of outweighs the reward. And you want to be very careful about how you're doing that, because there's lots of ways to get an undergraduate degree and not kind of over leverage yourself and prevent your son or daughter from creating that solid foundation to build their economic future. Like, as parents, we understand the concept of keeping our kids safe, right? Like, my kid, okay, he's going to be 17 in November. He's one of the older kids in his class. And so he'll be like, yeah, I want to party. I'm like, okay, the parents home? I don't know. I'm like, okay. Somebody comes to pick him up, right? I'm like, does that person have their license? Like, I don't know. Like, right? I mean, and so like alarm bells are going off in my head, and I'm like, safety, please don't distract the driver. Do you have your life alert on? Like, I want him to be safe, right? We can all understand that concept, right? I'm like, don't put your drink down. Don't touch any funny substances. Like, keep your kids safe. The same sort of mentality you have in that regard, help keep your kids financially safe. Okay, like put that hat on when you're looking at schools, because oftentimes we put the wrong hat on and we're like, well, I want to give my kid everything. I want them to be happy. And I get it. I'm there. I'm with you. Before I had kids, I'm like, what are they doing? Why are they making such irrational choices, right? But then you hear about the woman who like picked the car off the baby because she was like, I'm determined to save my child, and exhibit superhuman strength. And like, we would do anything. We would move mountains for our kids. But help them have a solid and a future with choices. I always tell my kids, make choices that give you more choices. Okay, don't make choices that limit your opportunities, because this college that you have to go to no matter what may seem like a really good idea when you're 18, but when you're 27 and living at home because you can't afford to live on your own, you might be making a different calculation. Carrie, yes? No, there's no such thing, Carrie. No, the FAFSA is for every school, public, private, schools in Guam. And the CSS profile is just for, there's about 250 colleges and universities that require the profile. That require it, yes. Only if the school requires it. So so the question that Carrie has is, when would you do the profile? Only if the student is applying to a school where it's required. If you're like me, and my kid has applying to 10 schools and only one of them requires a profile, I might be like, hey, bud, are you sure you want to go there? 9 schools it is, bud. Thanks. Thanks for playing. You know? Excellent. Was there a question back here, or was it over here? Yes, what's your name? Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a complicated question. So let me sum up for those of you that didn't hear that. So the question is, if I have an older son who works and has his own savings account, and then I have multiple savings accounts for different kids, and we file our taxes jointly, and we have a joint account, how does that all work together with the FAFSA and the profile? So the easy answer is, on the FAFSA, students have an income protection allowance, so unless the student makes over like $15,000 or $16,000, it's not going to work against them, and then they're not going to say, well, you made, $14,000, we're going to take out and say you should pay 7 of that to college. There's an income protection allowance for students. It's greater for parents, but you put those, if it's in a savings account, you have to put it and list it as an as the question on the FAFSA as an asset. If it's in a 529 plan, you only include the 529 plan for the student. So on the profile, it's the same thing. They may ask you to separate it and say, do you have savings for, it'll ask you to list all the people in your household and your children, and then it may actually break it down. Is there money set aside for this person to go to college? There's a saving account, are there savings accounts on this? So it's the same question, it's just asked in a different way on the profile. But the bottom line is you put the information in there. All right, I do want to move on, and I also want to mention the last thing is, the FAFSA is free. It's the free application for federal student aid. The profile costs money. It's $25 for the first school and $16 for each additional school. So again, if you're applying to like 20 schools, which you should not do, it can add up if you're doing the FAFSA or the profile. So after you apply, basically, colleges may request verification documents. So all that is their due diligence to supplement whatever was imported from the IRS. They may actually want to see a hard copy of it to verify that the numbers are correct. Verification is going to consist of a tax return worksheet, a tax return transcript, asset account statements. Basically all that is a statement of your bank account. And schools may request this. If they do, it's not because you did anything wrong. Okay, the takeaway from verification is that it's random and that it's not because your application has been flagged because you pun intended, fudged your numbers, okay? So don't worry, don't be alarmed. It's okay, you can work directly with the colleges on that. On the college financial aid office, the important thing to remember is I am a person that likes one-to-one contact. So when I go to CVS, I do not use the automatic kiosk. I like talking to a person. Even if I have to wait in line for three minutes behind 2 other people, I like human interaction. So some people don't like human interaction. They love the fact that you can just click it and go. Great, okay. So financial aid offices will have chat bots on their websites usually. So if you want to just use that, the AI, you can type in your question and then get it answered. Or if you want more of an explanation and a conversation, you can speak with them directly. My recommendation is you want to speak to an actual financial aid administrator, because some of the federal work-study jobs can have college students working in the financial aid office answering phones. Now they can be super knowledgeable and awesome and great. I love kids, have them, kids are great. but they can also, they're kids, right? So in my opinion, I think it's, for me, I would like to set up a time and make an appointment with a financial aid administrator that I can sit down with and like talk specifically about my concerns. So it just depends how you want to contact them. Again, to Tim's question earlier, if you have income changes from what's reflected on the FAFSA to your current situation, that's another reason to call. I mentioned before, like how financial decisions are made, that you take the cost of attendance less whatever the college thinks you can pay, your estimated contribution, and that equals your need. So the cost of attendance, think about it in terms of fixed costs and variable costs. Your fixed costs are the tuition and fees and the food and housing. Those are fixed costs, right? The variable costs are your books, transportation, and personal expenses. All those things rolled up equal the cost of attendance, okay? What you subtract from the cost of attendance is what's called your student aid index, which is formerly your expected family contribution. You can kind of calculate that, roughly what that'll be, using the SAI calculator at MIFA.org or on the net price calculator on the school's websites, okay? But what you do is you take the cost of attendance, you subtract the student aid index, and that's what you get after you fill out the FAFSA. When you fill out the FAFSA, it'll tell you, congratulations, Carrie, you can pay $20,000 for college, good for you. And you'll be like, actually, well, okay, fine, whatever, that's your estimate. I don't agree with it, but that's what it is. So you take the cost of attendance minus your student aid index, and that equals your eligibility or demonstrated need. So when a college tells you, we meet 100% of your demonstrated need, that's what they're saying. So they're not saying we're going to give you a full ride. They're saying is according to the government's estimation of what you can pay minus what the school costs, if we meet 100% of that, we're committed to meeting 100% of your need. Now, how do they meet your need? Because to me, meeting my need means you're going to give me grants and scholarships, free money, because that's what I need. I don't need a loan because I don't want to pay it back. I want free money. But that's not how it works. Financial aid awards are constructed using all the types of aid that we talked about in the beginning, okay? So first we're going to say your student aid index, this is what they think you can pay. They think you can pay $5,000, okay? And these are just imaginary numbers, so just go with me on this, okay? So let's say the college costs $45,000, okay? After you fill out your financial aid application, they estimate you can pay $5,000. So there's a difference of $40,000 that's left over. That is your demonstrated need. How are they going to fill your need? Well, like I said, grants and scholarships, that's filling my need. So that's $27,500. Okay, it's roughly $30,000 towards 40. Okay, so that's almost 70% of what my need is. I can roll with that. It's not awesome, but it's pretty good. Okay, enough to celebrate. Here is my student loan limit as a first-year student, $5,500. Okay. Now here's my work study, $2,000, and when you add that up, you still have a gap of $5,000. So this college did not meet 100% of my need, but they came close. I needed 40, they gave me 35. Okay? So in your evaluation, if you're looking at financial aid awards, most people, reasonable people, would consider this a pretty good award because they came close. They didn't meet all of your need, but they came close. And the bulk of your financial aid is in the form of grants and scholarships, which is the best kind because why? It's free money. I mentioned the net price calculator. Every college will have a net price calculator on their website, and they may include merit-based aid on it. I guess the one takeaway I have for this slide is if they include merit-based aid, part of the challenge is when you see an award, an estimated award from a net price calculator, the challenge is how much of that merit aid is actually distributed. In other words, I remember doing a financial aid net price calculator for somebody that was going to Occidental College. Who knows where Occidental College is? Not Accidental College, but Occidental College. LA. Excellent work, Bob. Let's go. Occidental College costs 74 at the time. This is probably 8 years ago. It cost 74 and change, $807. And then when we did the net price calculator, their discount was roughly 45. So what they would have to pay out of pocket was like 29, right? But when you broke down the $45,000 in aid, there was like an institutional scholarship of like 30. My question to Occidental was, how many students in your applicant pool actually would be eligible for that? Meaning, if you only had 5 $30,000 scholarships and you had 6,000 applicants, what are the odds that my kid is actually going to get that $30,000 scholarship? So it sounds good on paper, but you have to then also play the odds and say, well, is that realistic? And so I guess the main takeaway is you can do the net price calculators, but take it with a grain of salt because it's not a guarantee. There's actually a fine print on there saying that if you hold this to us and you demand that we give you this in financial aid, we will have our army of lawyers come to your house and make you cry. So here's the Kleenex, right? So, it's just, again, it's just an estimate. When you get your financial aid award, keep in mind that there is no uniformity to it. The colleges construct them in different ways. And so your task is to use the skills that you've learned in the language of financial aid to determine which is the best award. Now, my friend right here, I'm assuming you're a student, right? Unless you're this young lady's sister. You're a student, right? Yeah. What's your name? Leilani, what's up? Can you tell me, based on all the information you've heard tonight, which is the best financial aid package? Pressure, Leilani. Is it College A, College B, or College C? Can you tell me? College B. Why do you think College B, Leilani, is the best financial aid award? It's the safest option to take? Okay, I can roll with that. College B gave you $25,000 in grants, and your unmet need is $7,000. I can roll with that. Sound reasoning. Okay. Others might argue that College C could be good, okay, because they gave you $25,000. But College A gave you $40,000, and your unmet need is zero. Wow, I'm going to really go with College A because my unmet need is zero. Okay, so if my unmet need is zero, that means that that's a good financial aid award, right? Not necessarily, because what happens when all the unmet need is the same? These are 3 different financial aid packages that all total $35,000. So how can you tell? I mean, they all look the same. College A, College B, College C. Wow. They all gave me $35,000. So I got to come up with $5,000 out of pocket in addition to what they think I can pay in my student aid index. So, is there another student in the house? I want to pick on another student. Is there another student? No other student. Dang. All right. Well, I tried. What's your name, ma'am? Chrissy, what's up? Which is the best financial aid award? A, B, or C? Chrissy. Why would you go A, Chrissy? Grants and scholarships. Excellent. You get the most grants and scholarships in College A, the best financial aid award, and 0 loans. 0 parent loans. You get a student loan, but 0 parent loans. Conversely, the worst financial aid package is College C, because not only did you get 0 in grants and scholarships, but they gave you a $29,000 parent loan. Why is that problematic? Because it exposes the flaw in the system of financial aid. You could have an EFC of 0, meaning the government has determined you have no ability to pay. You could be on public assistance. You could have an income of 0. And yet, you can get a $30,000 parent loan. And the schools will give you a $30,000 parent loan. And to me, it is mind-blowing, illogical, unethical, and should be outlawed. But it's a flaw, it's a loophole in the system that colleges exploit because in some regard, it's capitalism without risk. Colleges can enroll students and they have guaranteed government money. I mean, they don't really care if you can pay or not because they get paid. You're the ones left holding the bill. And the colleges still get paid even if the students don't finish. So if a student takes out a loan and doesn't get their degree, I mean, the student's on the hook. So Amy, I forgot to ask, is it AIMEE or AMY?
It's AMY.
AMY, excellent. Question.
Do our seniors get a presentation like this?
Do your seniors get a presentation?
Brought them?
Yeah, no, I mean, I love talking to kids. It can be hard. Like every year when I talk to schools and I talk to parents, they ask me to come back and I would like to come back and talk to kids. The challenge is their schedules. And it's like, how do we get young people all in the same place at the same time? But that's a good question. I'm going to talk with folks at MIFA this year to see if we can't figure out how to way to utilize resource periods. In Arlington High, we call them X blocks, where kids have free periods. And maybe we can't record something like this and, but they have short attention spans. And part of it is the interactiveness and getting them engaged and helping them. I have tons of good scenarios for kids to show them real world examples of people who are doing awesome things and where do they go to school? Do you even care? And why it matters so much for them now, and particularly in this region. But if you talk to kids in California who are going to 2-year schools and then transferring, I mean, I went to Harvard with kids who started at 2-year college in LA, and they transferred to a state school in California. And then for graduate school, then they're like, okay, I'd like to go to this school, because it has this program I like. But, I mean, we're sort of we're kind of prisoners of the moment and prisoners of our area, because if I'm in New England and I say college, what do you think of? You think of a 4-year liberal arts university, serpentine walls, professor on the quad singing Kumbaya, strumming the guitar, and kids yeah, I dig that, right? But then you go to Idaho or you go to Indiana and you say, what is college? And they'll say, oh, IU or Purdue. It's really interesting. I invite you, if you work and you go to conferences as part of your job function and you're in a different state and you're meeting people, just ask them, where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to college? Don't ask what do you do? That's what we do in America, right? What do you do? As if your job defines who you are. Ask them where they went to college. I guarantee you, if you ask 5 people that question, 3 of them, you will never have heard the college they went to. And you'll be okay, you seem to be living a nice life. Great, right? So where your son or daughter goes to college is not a reflection on how well of a job you did as a parent. It's not your capstone project. You may have pride slapping that bumper sticker in your car and be I did awesome. My kid's an honor student at this school. They got into this college. Didn't I do a good job? Celebrate me. No. It's a market condition, and everybody's definition of affordability is different, and everybody's level of risk is different. And the clearer you define those things before you get too far deep into this process, the better off you'll be. Lori, question.
Full disclosure, I've been a director of financial aid at Ivy League, a law school, and a small liberal arts. So if you could humor me for one second,
Sure.
I want to piggyback on Amy's comment.
Sure.
Because it is immensely important. The key is we have to be honest with our kids about what our income is and what that means.
Yeah.
So our kids sitting through a presentation like this, having no idea what our income is and what it means, is going to mean nothing to them. But some of the best conversations I used to have with families and kids in the financial aid office was when families sat down and recreated that chart that you had up there with their situation. What is, the cost of education at each of the schools that you're considering? What is the financial aid package for each one? What is your family? So it's an excellent point, Amy. I think right now it's too early because we don't have the financial aid awards, and it's really time to sit down and have it with our kids when we know where they've been admitted, what the financial aid award looks like, and then sit down and have an open, honest conversation with your son.
Wow, thank you. No, I appreciate that, Lori. You did have me sweating for a little bit when you're I used to work in financial aid. I was should have told me that at the beginning, Lori. I'm oh my gosh, she's gonna make so many different corrections, and she's gonna be how dare you? No, I'm traumatized by sometimes parents will accost me afterwards. When I said, don't pay for anybody to help you, this woman actually complained to the school, and then MIFA called me, and they were did you say that? And I was and the school was annoyed, and this lady chased me down, and it was awkward. Thank you, Lori. I did, Carrie, these aren't ringers. Like, I did not plant the audience. I swear. But thank you. And that's a great point. I am going to talk about kitchen table conversations, but it's a cultural change because I don't know about you guys, but my parents never talked about money. I had no idea, like, who made what, like, where, like, all I know is we were at Kmart and I was like, hey, can I have that toy? And they'd be like, yes. Or they'd be like, no. Like, I'm like, okay, great. Or we go to Chuck E. Cheese. I'm like, can I get an extra $5 so I can play Karate Champ and Cubert? Like, we didn't talk about it. But I think part of parenting in the 21st century is that different dynamic and relationship you can have with kids, and kids have agency. I will say this too. I joke a lot about teenagers. One thing that I am like honored to be a parent or like really proud of and see among all kids, regardless of demographics and situations, is kids have tremendous empathy in a way that I don't think that kids when I grew up like had and cared. And even though we can talk about the scourge of social media and like the horrors of it all, I do think that there's an awareness and it's just about like social issues, the world, like climate change, like kids are just with it. And like when you kind of approach them with that and you talk to them like the young adults they're becoming, it can be really fruitful. And I think when you're another point I would add is this listen. Maybe your kid doesn't want to go to college next year. Maybe they want to take a year off. Entertain that idea, entertain that concept. Really listen, because if you just shut it down and be like, no, you're going to college no matter what, like that can be problematic. Right? So I'm in the boat with you, okay? I'm so there with you, and I'm so ready to be an empty nester. Like, people are like, what are you going to do when your kids leave? I'm like, no. Question is not, what am I going to do when my kids leave? What am I not going to do? Are you serious? I'm going to pull out the guitar again. I'm going to make an album. I'm going to write the next great American novel, like Jonathan Franzen and the Corrections. Are you kidding me? Too bad Oprah's not on, because I'd be like, Oprah, this is your book, okay? We'd be all over it. All right, so real quick, I know we're almost at time, and I want to be sensitive to that, but if you get a financial aid award letter, and typically you're going to see a gap between like what the school costs and then what you still have to pay, you may see a balance due. Let's say you see a balance due of $20,000, okay? Your first thought should not be, gee, I'm going to take out a loan to borrow that $20,000 of the remaining balance due. Your first objective should be, and I have to just check this to make sure the kids are not burning down the house. Okay, great. Your first objective should be, how do I cut that in half? And the way we cut this huge gap in half is to say, all right, what can I take from past income? What can I take from present income? And what can I borrow from future income? Okay, so past income is savings. Let's say you have $20,000 in the bank, save for college. You don't want to put that $20,000 to satisfy that balance of that 1 year, because now you have no more savings. You want to take a portion of that, and maybe a portion of the savings that your son or daughter has, and you say, all right, you know what? Between the two of us, we'll knock off $5,000 off of that $20,000 balance remaining, right? You can take, that's your past income. You can take your present income and say, you know what? I'm going to pay a certain amount every month out of pocket. I'm not going to pay $15,000 out of pocket, but let's say I take $5,000 and I split that up over 10 months. And now I'm paying $500 a month over 10 months in a tuition management plan. There typically is a nominal enrollment fee of about $50, but you can make those $500 a month payments with no interest. And so now you're taking present income, and $500 a month sounds like a lot, but just don't go to Starbucks every day, okay? Why am I so tall? I don't drink coffee. Coffee stunts your growth, right? So $8 a day on your mocha chocolate latte or whatever they call it. By the way, if you don't have Starbucks and you go in there and you try to order a coffee, you feel really dumb. Can I just tell you? They were like, venti. I'm like, what's venti? I don't understand. Like, what's soy milk? Like, can I just get hot chocolate? Can I just get like something that's not pumpkin? Anyway, I'm like the only person that goes into Starbucks and actually orders water. Like, I just get water and a donut. But then I had to lay off the donuts because it was making my arthritis worse. So anyway. But your monthly payment you can make, and actually you can get your kid to contribute $100 a month, because maybe your kid will not go to that kegger and they'll actually study on a Friday or Saturday night and then go party Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and Thursdays like I did, right? But they have some responsibility and ownership of paying for college in addition to you. Okay, then now you knocked off $10,000 from that $20,000 remaining balance. So now if you decide to borrow And by borrowing, that could be maybe you take out a home equity line of credit, maybe you go through an entity like MIFA, maybe you go through your local bank like Citizens, Eastern Bank, something local, not national like Bank of America or Discover, but now you get a loan. Now you're borrowing $10,000 versus 20. And so your cumulative borrowing can be 40 instead of 80. And also, if you limit your borrowing that first year, maybe your son or daughter gets to be a RA, a resident assistant, and now you're not paying room and board for sophomore, junior, and senior year. Okay, so always think when you have a balance due, think how can I cut that in half, and what can I use from past savings, past money, past income, and present income to limit the amount I borrow for future income. And so this gets back to Lori's point about important kitchen conversations. What is each school's net price? Okay? Could you save money by starting at a 2-year school? Start at a 2-year school, get your associate's degree, then transfer it to a 4-year school. Because when you do that, you enter that that school as a third-year student, and then you get your diploma from that. So if you start, let's say you start at Quinsigamond Community College, and then transfer to UMass Lowell, you'll get your associates from Quinsig, and your bachelor's degree will be like UMass Lowell. Great. Hooray. Consider the number of children in your household. I like to say that not just the student goes to school, but the family goes to school. Okay? The family goes to college, not just the student. Think in terms of debt and starting salary. And if you're considering graduate school, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to have an undergraduate degree when you're in debt 50, 60, 70 large. Makes no sense. Okay? That's even more incentive to start at a less expensive college or university and then look at paying for grad school. For Massachusetts State Financial Aid, there's a portal through the Office of Student Financial Assistance. To be eligible for Massachusetts aid, you have to do the FAFSA before May 1st. So that's just the thing. Sometimes people wait and they're like, oh, I'm not sure where I want to go to school, and then they do the FAFSA after May 1st. You can fill out the FAFSA as late as May 31st, as late as June. It's open until the end of June each academic year, but then you will lose the ability to gain state aid. You will only be eligible for federal aid. So that's something to keep in mind if your student's kind of on the fence, or maybe your student's thinking, well, maybe I'm not going to go to college right away, and then they decide to enroll in the fall and do their financial aid. They won't get any state aid. Question in the back. What's your name? Kathy, what's up? With a C or K? Excellent.
Is the state aid only for state schools?
The state, good question, yes. So the Mass grant can be used at colleges and states where there's reciprocity agreements, and you can find those at the Office of Student Financial Aid website. And also, you can get out-of-state tuition or reduction on out-of-state tuition costs at certain New England schools through the new tuition break. And some of those New England schools you can use your Massachusetts financial aid at. So it's the New England Board of Higher Education, nebi.org/tuition break for more information about that. And then Mass Transfer gives you more information on some of the financial aid incentives that encourage students to start at a 2-year school and then transfer to a 4-year school. So free resources, you can sign up at fafsaday.org and find out when there's opportunities. There are events held through October through February in English and Spanish where you can have your financial aid application filled out for you by representatives in the financial aid community. There are also educational opportunity centers, and the massedco.org is the list, and you can find the opportunity center near you. And in addition to doing the FAFSA, they can also help you with the profile. So if you are, depending on where you are, yes? Bill, what's up? How do I remember that? Because you were right next to Bev. I don't know. You know what it is? Actually, I played memory a lot when I was a kid, so that's how I remember it. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Just ballpark, how long does it typically take for one to fill out the FAFSA?
Bill's question is, how long does it take to fill out the FAFSA? Usually they tell you to give yourself an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I've done it in 7 minutes is my record, I think. Don't try to go for speed, by the way. Accuracy is more important. But you can do it and save it and come back to it later. Okay? By the way, free marital advice. I've been married 21 years. blissfully, like to say. There were some choppy seas in the middle, obviously. Everybody knows, 7 years in, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? And the introduction to kids obviously can make things a bit challenging. But share the burden. Like, don't put it all on one parent to be like the guru of all financial aid and all things and like be responsible for deadlines and whatnot. Share the load. I know in my house, my wife kind of we have one account, but she manages the books and like she's all on like everything online. I'm kind of old fashioned. I like to write checks, put stamps on, balance my checkbook, right? See where things are going. But when it comes to paying for college, we are a team. We are a unit. I'm not just deferring it to her and be like, okay, yeah, you got that, right? Sharing the burden then allows you to have those conversations with your kids about what is the cost of college? What does this mean? How are you going to contribute? And makes for happy family dynamics, which I'm all about. So, but through senior year, the key takeaway for this is that many schools have now moved to test optional. There's no disadvantage to leaving your test scores out. Now, some people will say, well, will that make you ineligible for certain merit-based awards if your SAT scores aren't on there? I can't speak to that with great authority other than to say there's other ways to see your academic merit, like the number of honors and advanced placement classes you have and your GPA. And the SAT has been shown, the SAT has been shown that it just correlates strongly with income and it's not necessarily a measure of intelligence. So my advice, if you want to take it, get in, get busy, get out, but don't like agonize over the scores. Also, if you are a junior currently right now, please take advantage of next summer to complete your essay. Come to school as a senior having your essay completed versus waiting until you are a senior to start your college essay. Okay? And MIFA has great resources, so you can log on, look at the financial timeline. And then for spring after senior year, there's going to be an event called Paying the College Bill, a webinar that I recommend everybody attend because they're going to break down your financial aid letters in detail and then give you good tips on paying and communicating with colleges. What you can do now, everybody should get their FSA ID. Remember, parents, two-person parent households, only one parent needs an FSA ID. Every child in the home needs an FSA ID. Make sure you do that. Question in the back. Correct. What's your name? Jen's question was, if you already have your FSA ID, will it automatically come up when you enter information? It should when you enter in your, like if you're, but you want to make sure you can retrieve it. So if you forgot what it is, go into the website right now and retrieve it, entering in your date of birth, social, and things like that. And if you know it, great, and then you can use it to apply. But if you need it resent to you, then you have that time now before December. So excellent. Sure, Jen. There's no question quota. Go ahead. Yeah, so the question is, if the student is doing like a 4, like I know that physical therapy does like a 4+1, sometimes there's a 3-2 engineering program, liberal arts colleges, will that be reflected in the letter of acceptance? Yes, again, it's going to be a one-time award, or the award will be through the amount of time it takes the student to obtain the degree. Excellent. Thanks, Jen. So go to MIFA.org, look on their events, sign up for their blog. You can do social things on MIFA, listen to their podcasts. I actually have a funny YouTube video on here, unintentionally funny, because I was in the basement recording a webinar on how to pay for college, and my kid comes downstairs, wanted to play Fortnite. I'm like, dude, can you wait, please? I had to put myself on mute. And I'm like, I told you I was in the basement, like giving a presentation. He's like, well, why are you talking to me? I'm like, why'd you come downstairs? Boys, this is what I'm saying. If it was a sweet, nice, right? No? Okay. Bill's like, no, it's not happening. See, I don't know. Maybe I had delusions of grandeur. And I was like, I was going to be like the hero. But yeah, okay. Lori. Sure.
signature. So they can't be the same email addresses. And oftentimes, if parents sit down and do it, they get confused and they put their information in the student. So, just kind of focus student first, student's information, and then parent.
Let's go, Lori. I mean, you know what? We're going on tour, okay? Come see me after this because we are going on tour. We're going to take the Commonwealth by storm. Can't wait. It's awesome. Anyway, I'm going to stick around if anybody has any questions, but there's the 800 number for MIFA. Use the email collegeplanning@mifa.org. I wish everybody here a wonderful fall. Good luck. You can do this. I believe in you. And go Eagles. No, just kidding. But yes, have a good night. Thanks, guys. Be well.